Hey folks, welcome back to the Purpose Work Nation conversation, the director's cut, where we explore everything that's in the book and a little bit more. Uh, so, chapters 1 through 3, we're laying the philosophical and historical framework for why purpose and belonging matter, why business is at the front line of national renewal, and really why we need to start acting like who we really are: mammals, social, herd, bison. In the last chapter, we looked at kind of line by line uh, people functions, L&D, DEI, wellness, culture, and how they show up currently under the eagle, and the possibility for envisioning them as bison led. Now, in this chapter, chapter 5, we're going to go into the twin drivers of flourishing, so purpose and belonging. We'll also touch on the science of social learning. So, for those of you who are involved in education or corporate training and development, this one I think is going to be a really powerful one for you. But before we get going, also want to presence that lots of ways to engage deeper with the work. Workshops, keynotes, book clubs, all here in the description below. And to presence the outcome, meaning bringing that whole person to work. We're going to again begin with a PIES check-in, and I invite you to do this with me. So PIES again is physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. So physically, tired. My mom and my wife ran me ragged over the last week, and it was great. I mean, really fun. I think I shared some of this yesterday. But man, I am tired. And especially yesterday was just one of those days that was just stacked from like 8 a.m. to really 9 p.m. I wasn't working from 7 to 9, but I was in my men's circle, which my mom joined, which was also very beautiful. So just on a lot yesterday. So if I occur as spacey or burnout, that's probably what's going on there. Let's see, intellectually, yeah, intellectually invigorated / sad. Read the introduction to our imperialist move in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and while I admire parts of it, like, oh yes, American way, like we're gonna bring democracy. Of course, it's full of like jingoism and racism and white supremacy, all those assumptions embedded. So, yeah, feeling a little sad about that. Also, my mom cut out, as though it was like 1992, as she is prone to do, an article from The Economist. Just looking, again, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about already about how traditional DEI is just broken, dead in the water, performative checkbox nonsense that makes matters worse. So The Economist came out with an article. This is the August 27th, 2022 issue. Happy to see that. I also read a really beautiful article by Otto Scharmer, looking at some of the broader global changes that need to happen in terms of governance. Because, like we've talked about here, everybody wants generative, just, sustainable, flourishing socio and economic models. It's something like 3/4 of the global population. They want to belong. They want thriving wages. But our governance systems and the private sector as well isn't set up for that. We're set up for the eagle. And this was like a big picture article using a lot of words I didn't understand that I'm going to have to reread and look up, which is always fun for me. Emotionally, yeah, just really grateful for my mom. There are I know few folks who have the depth of connection that we have. I may have I don't think I shared this, but when I began my inner journey in my late 20s, that was after like 10 years of being poster child of toxic masculinity. I mean, I had been arrested in 6 states. I was terrible to women. I used a lot of problematic language around race, sexuality, gender, um, and she loved me through the whole thing. Like, she calls it the lost decade, where I was just, you know, full tilt party boy, ignorant, unskillful. But in my late 20s, when I started to do my inner work, I said, Mom, I really screwed the pooch on this. Let's reboot our relationship. And so we decided to start traveling together, doing service projects together. As I was doing personal development work with Mankind Project, Purpose Discovery, Landmark, she started doing that stuff too. So we have this inner journey that we're on together. And of course, we like to have fun together. So, like, I'm really happy for her. She's 8 months after losing her husband, my stepdad, Dennis. And so there's grief, but she's also excited because she's a very vivacious, healthy woman who, likes men, likes sex. And so I'm very excited for her to have this next 20 years of her life full of the things that were missing over the last 7 as my stepdad's health was declining. Yeah, just really grateful for her. Also sad and lonely. So my mom left this morning, as did my wife. My wife is in a 4-day training or 3-day training with Luminous Awareness Institute. So just me and the cat. And I got friends, but I'm like, when my wife is gone, something's missing for me. Spiritually, yeah, and this is something we've talked about here with Martin Luther King, this concept of beloved community. So last night in my men's circle, it was all gendered circles. So my mom attended, but a number of my brothers brought their significant others, and there was a lot of beautiful messiness. Just, there was no pretense there. And it was another experience of beloved community for me. So it was very spiritually nourishing last night. And we'll get to some of this in the epilogue about really how it feels to belong. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today in chapter 5. It's belonging. So today we'll talk about more like the science and why it matters and how it's connected to everything that organizations and the nation cares about. But the feeling of it, fucking A. It's awesome. Okay, let's dive in. Chapter 5, The Twin Drivers of Flourishing. Thank you for being on this journey and making it this far. I've tried to provoke and inspire you. I've tried to support these provocations with data. By this point, you may already get it. After all, it is a pretty simple message. Empower everyone to live their purpose at work and build diverse and authentic relationships. And this expresses the eternal wisdom of the Golden Rule and our ancestors, our mentors, and teachers. Although we're going to continue going into greater detail into the nature and mechanics of activating purpose and belonging, I invite you to hold the simplicity of this movement, and remember who you were as a child. I invite you to consider that what we're doing here is merely remembering who we really are, and that we can get back to being humans with each other. As Robert Fulghum reminded us in his 1986 book, All I Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, the most important things in life were taught to us in kindergarten, like listening, sharing our gifts, respecting each other's beliefs and needs, telling the truth, asking for consent, taking responsibility for the impacts of our actions, making amends, and hugging it out. In this sense, the journey we're on as leaders organizations, nations, a species, and a planet is a deep remembering. The Bison Way is basic. It doesn't have to be hard. We need to remember who we are, realize what unique gifts we bring, and relearn how to receive the gifts of others, along with standing up for what we believe and protecting what is sacred and repairing harm. Our wisdom traditions and wise leaders like Brene Brown, George Bernard Shaw, Thomas Friedman, Martin Luther King Jr., and Fred Rogers all endeavor to guide us back into the simplicity of our true nature. Our essential, caring, courageous, and creative nature is here, always waiting to be expressed, to be remembered. So a few grounding quotes here. The first is from Brene Brown. Quote, "I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, valued. When they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship." Another one of my favorites from George Bernard Shaw. I keep it in my wallet. My friend Terry read it at our wedding. It may be familiar to you as well. This, quote, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature, instead of a feverish, selfish little clot of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I've got held up for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations." Now, one of the reasons this quote appeals to me so much is because one of the persistent shadow limiting beliefs, behaviors of mine is entitlement. You know, tall, deep voice white guy, Ivy MBA, all the privileges, and there's a part of me, and I don't think this will ever go away, that feels entitled. Like that I'm pissed off that the world hasn't rolled out its red carpet for me, because it should. So this one always reminds me to do for the community, live your purpose, give. Lifelong lesson. And the next quote from Thomas Friedman. Quote, "We used to work with our hands for many centuries. Then we worked with our heads. And now we're going to have to work with our hearts. Because there's one thing machines cannot, do not, never will have, and that's a heart. We're going from hands to heads to hearts." End quote. Which again, for you learning and development folks, head, heart, hands. And of course, in the backdrop of AI, it's human creativity, connection, belonging, collaboration, community. It's all those things that a machine really isn't. Not that we need to define ourselves against machines, but again, it's a deep remembering, coming back to who we really are, that simplicity, that remembering. So from Martin Luther King Jr., quote, "But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. The type of love that I stress here is not eros, a sort of aesthetic or romantic love, not philia, a sort of reciprocal love between personal friends, but it is agape, which is understanding goodwill for all men. End quote. So this is, what I was talking about, I think, in the author's notes, that unum fiat ex pluribus, to love another more than you love yourself. Really getting at the heart of belonging, of community, and the great spiritual task of the United States to prove it. Like, this is an experiment. This is a scientific experiment to see if it can be done and then replicated. And which I judge, given my understanding, is the purpose of humanity. So we're doing this here in the United States, in your organization, on behalf of all human beings. Next quote, last quote from Fred Rogers, aka Mr. Rogers. The older I get, the more convinced I am that the space between people who are trying their best to understand each other is hallowed ground. So hallowed, like sacred. Like, if we are moving towards each other, we are doing this sacred task, the spiritual task of humanity, the United States, and just remembering who we were, before the eagles broke us. That kindergarten wisdom, the ancestral wisdom. This is all that's happening here. I had to go through this whole exercise of writing a damn book to put it in language that modernity, that capitalism will understand. But it's basic shit. Totally basic shit. So, to activate this wisdom is to consecrate the ethics of the bison. There is an emerging set of best practices that will guide us back home to ourselves and each other, to activate tenderness, authenticity, understanding, purpose, belonging, and respect. Let's explore the research. Research review. The same two things that lead to a long, happy, and healthy life, purpose and social integration, we talked about this before, each yielding like a 7 or 8 year bump in longevity, are also what we need to be fulfilled, creative, and productive at work. And according to Edelman's 2021 Trust Barometer, employees want more purposeful work and a sense of belonging and being valued. Now, why is that? They're humans, just like you. We just want to be human. That's it. Similarly, Gartner found that workforce health depended on purpose and connection. Quote, what employees need is a more personal sense of purpose. When employees believe that their work is personally relevant, there is a 26% increase in the likelihood of the organization to sustain workforce health. Employees also need to feel connected to one another. Highly cohesive teams have a 37% higher likelihood of sustaining workforce health. End quote. So how do we activate purpose, belonging, and the ethics of the bison in our organizations? Two studies based on the work of my former teams at Ion Learning and Imperative illuminate the foundations of scalable culture change. So this study, we did this with Golden Gate University, and my colleague Christina Asbady and I co-wrote and published it. It'll probably be out as a PhD thesis at some point too. So the Ion Learning study summary. 103 people from a large biotechnology company were placed into groups of 3 to 4 peers, with each group optimized for diversity. So that means that group of 3 or 4 were as different from each other as possible. They completed a 6-module program where they learned new concepts, reflected on their purpose and values, shared their experiences with each other in 6-hour-long small group discussions. They did this in the flow of work and over a period of time. And the results of this approach are that 95% of people completed the program, which when you think about e-learning completion percentages, it's like 5 to 15. 90% felt that they could apply the concepts, 85% changed their behaviors, and 76% embedded their understanding in daily habits. And participants reported learning 63% more from their peers than they did from the content alone. Additionally, 98% of people experience respect from their diverse peers, 96% experience empathy, 96% discovered alternative perspectives to their challenges, and 94% felt comfortable discussing their anxiety and fears that distract them from work. So think about that. 94% of folks across difference, so political ideology, race, sexuality, gender, said I can share my fears with my colleagues. 10 hours is how long this intervention actually takes. 10 hours. That's equivalent of 1.5 day training that most organizations are just, like I said, pissing away because 90% is forgotten. But when we do it in this manner, small groups, small diverse groups, over time, every 10 to 14 days, folks retain, apply, take new actions, develop new habits, and they experience that beloved community, that empathy and trust across difference. So let's look at this imperative study that came out, I believe, earlier this year, or maybe late last year. I worked for Imperative. I got to experience this work. I can personally tell you it's very effective. They've developed something really powerful, and they've had probably the market leader in social learning, meaning they've got something that they've been working at for a long time and have a lot of A-list clients doing this. And so this study involved 300,000 conversations across 27 different functions, 14 industries such as professional services, finance, retail, consumer tech, healthcare, government, education, and nonprofits. And people were placed into pairs to have 5 one-hour-long guided video discussions to reflect on their purpose and share their work and life experiences with each other. So this is just groups of 2, not optimized for diversity, but nonetheless having a similar type of conversation. Before the beginning of the study, they found that 22% had no meaningful relationships, and that 76% of the participants desired to develop power skills and work relationships versus the 24% who desired to develop technical skills. They found that after the intervention, participants felt 2.4 times more positive and had 2 times more friends at work. Now this is relevant because I believe it's Gallup research that says if you have a best friend at work, you're X% or X times more likely to stay. 78% felt their experience made them more successful, 71% took new actions during the program, and 52% took a new action after each conversation. Further, among participants who were unfulfilled prior to the study, 62% reported a significant increase in fulfillment in less than 3 months. So collectively, these studies paint a picture of what we need to do to guide us back home to ourselves and each other. A, put people in small, diverse groups of peers. B, empower them to learn new skills, activate their purpose and values at work. And C, share their experiences with each other and in the flow of work over time and regardless of where they are physically located. Now let's take a closer look at each driver of organizational flourishing, purpose and belonging. Driver number 1, purpose. So as a reminder, the definition of purpose is a transcendent identity beyond concerns of self and family that includes many aspects, such as one's vision for the world, mission, craft, your greatest gifts, and most cherished virtues. Purpose gives us access to more of ourselves and more connection to others. It serves us individually, as it is the key to our leadership, impact, fulfillment, and prosperity. And it serves others, as it expands our identity and concern from ourself and family to include larger entities, such as our community, company, nation, and planet. It makes us more independent and self-reliant. It is also more connected and compassionate. When we activate purpose, we come alive. Now, I've shared that this I judge as a developmental capacity and a civil right, a human right. This gives us access to who we really are, not what society and family trauma tell us that we are. We know who we are. Who we belong to, who we serve, and what is ours to do. We have the clarity, confidence, and courage to do the hard, right, and unpopular things, and to do them with wisdom and compassion. We are connected to ourselves, each other, and a future of shared prosperity. When we move towards each other, towards discomfort and ambiguity, and find the hidden connections and the hallowed ground between us, we lean on versus lean down on each other. We uplift each other, welcome one another's wholeness, and stand for one another's purpose and greatness, empowering each of us to feel seen, heard, valued, and experience Shaw's the true joy in life. Further, your employees must have a connection to their own purpose in order to understand themselves as bigger than their personality, gender, skin, color, and politics, and to be able to find their own unique connection to the organization's purpose. In a sense, purpose is like a muscle. It has to be developed first individually before one can begin to take on larger forms of meaning, such as an organization's mission and values. Think of the thousands of hours Stephen Curry, the Golden State Warrior, NBA All-Star basketball player, spent practicing, dribbling, shooting, so that they became second nature, allowing him to focus on the larger matters, such as team relationships, the plays, his opponents, leadership, and a strategy to win the NBA title. Similarly, having a connection to one's own purpose is also the foundation to seeing the outside world and interacting with it as though it was a part of us and not something outside of us. For example, when we spend just 5 minutes connecting with our purpose, we're 4 times more likely to choose to live in a diverse city. And we also experience a 4x reduction in anxiety in diverse environments. While this is a stark difference, it is not unexpected, as purpose is correlated with numerous pro-social attributes. My mouth is getting tired, and I was just thinking of when former President Trump announced Truth Essential. It happens. You talk a lot, the mouth stops working. So, numerous pro-social attributes. Purpose is correlated with an increase in wisdom, transcendence, curiosity, and temperance. Purpose is correlated with an increase in gratitude, compassion, and grit. Writing about important values increases other-centeredness and reduces defensiveness. Purpose is correlated with an increase in philanthropy and volunteering by 50%. Purpose enhances reflection on past and future, increasing consideration of impacts on others. I'll pause here for a second. About 5 years ago, I went to a book event for Thomas More, the guy who wrote Care of the Soul, New York Times bestseller, considered like part of the purpose canon. And I had asked him at the event, I said, how do you know that somebody has embodied their soul or their purpose? And he goes, 2 things. One is they are polytropic, meaning they can be in any environment, so trope like environment, and still be themselves, still be pretty much okay with what's going on, or they're not easily triggered by their environment. So that kind of speaks to that confidence, that courage, that centeredness, like the clarity, like, yeah, this is messed up, but I still know who's here. And the second was a good sense of humor. The way that he held it was that over time you begin to take yourself and others less seriously, and that you can laugh and find the absurdity in a situation. Uh, in my weaker moments, I get angry. Like if I'm in a very she place like Malibu, or I'm like, "Argh!" Like I just want to curb everyone. Like I just like get all this luxury plastic surgery out of my face because there's something unhealed in me, something that wasn't fully integrated and embodied around that. Still comes up, I gotta admit, but not as much. So the reason for these dynamics is that purpose grounds us in our deepest identity, which also gives us the freedom to accept others for who they are. Purpose, or perhaps it is not surprising that three of McKinsey's 6 aspects of inclusive culture, authenticity, meaningful work, and camaraderie, are driven by purpose. In the thousands of purpose statements generated by participants in the programs I've led, such as Man on Purpose, Purpose Challenge, Purpose Masters Program, and the Global Purpose Expedition, as well as in the purpose activation programs I've led for LinkedIn, Monroe County Corrections, J&J, the U.S. Navy, Google, Morgan Stanley, and the U.S. Marine Corps, I have yet to encounter a purpose that isn't generative, inclusive, and good-natured. Purpose statements are usually about peace, connection, love, compassion, fun, healing, prosperity, creativity, and/or service. I've never heard anything about being number one, or hate, or division, or oppression in a purpose statement. So the highlight of my year in 2019 was doing a half-day purpose experience up in Seattle for Monroe County Corrections. And I was afraid, even though I'm large and strong, I'm afraid around convicted felons. And so just the whole experience going to prison, like, security, background checks, walking the yard, getting into the room. I was afraid, because my understanding of prison is probably informed by many of yours. I mean, yeah, I've been locked up a lot in jail, but not prison. So it was formed by movies like Oz and things like that. So I was deeply afraid, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be around the worst of humanity. The best. So these inmates, they were protected populations. So former gang members, child sex offenders, transgender folks, like folks they can't put in the general population because they'll get murdered. So again, I was carrying all that baggage in with me. I'm like, wow. When they stood up and read their purpose statements aloud, I mean, they were giving Martin Luther King a run for his money. People who have done really bad stuff, right? What's his name from Equal Justice Initiative? Oh my gosh, Brian Stevenson said, you are not the worst thing you've done. And I was reminded of that again. Like the visions that they shared just were like bone rattling. Like I was like, oh my God. They're so connected to their humanity and their love for humanity. Even though some of these people are not going to see the light of day. They got life sentences. And they're like, this is what my life's about now. So I'll take that over any B2B sales conversation with like trying to convince people that purpose matters, and like, you don't get it. Because purpose absolutely matters to everyone. As such, cultivating a sense of purpose is a powerful foundation for future DEI efforts. With the psychological individuation and the inclusive pro-social qualities correlated with a sense of purpose, when people encounter their microaggressions, biases, and privileges, they have less resistance to transforming them. The reason for this is that when people activate their purpose, they enact a powerful shift from an identity from their socialized self to their authentic self. They rely less on their ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, income bracket, age, religion, and political party to define themselves and find a new home for their identity inside of their unique purpose and values. So they're not their worst thing. They're not what society tells them to do. This is critical for every one of us to experience, especially privileged groups like myself. So that when we develop inclusive leadership and communication practices, we see them as self-expression, an expansion of our truest and highest sense of self, and a skill set to fulfill upon our purpose. And this is of growing importance as our teams and customers become increasingly diverse. Further, I may have said this earlier, I might say it later, but to lead in the 21st century means to lead inclusively and with purpose. We have a diverse workforce. You cannot be a good leader if you're not inspiring folks across difference. So you first have to activate your reason for why you want to lead inclusively, and then develop that inclusive skill set to activate and call for everyone's greatness. So if you aspire to leadership, purpose and belonging, but purpose in this section is absolutely critical to develop. You do not have a leader without purpose, just a manager. Further, what we want for ourselves, deep down, we also want for others, especially since 97% of us value having a sense of purpose. When we connect with our purpose, we frequently share it with people close to us. Additionally, we recognize on some level that other folks have purposes too. This is also like, I'm trying not to sound condescending, but it's frequently an aha for leaders. They're like, wait a minute, other people have purposes? It's not just me and my company? Like, yeah, knucklehead. Every one of these people has dignity as a human being and has a soul, and it's something unique to give to their tribe, to their community. They're like, there are human beings here? Like, thank you and bless you, and may many more of you come to that realization. When we harness the sense of rootedness and fulfillment that purpose provides, many begin to regard purpose as a human right. Without it, we are beholden to our limiting beliefs, socialized selves, and the family trauma, systemic inequities, and internalized oppression that form them. Accordingly, the personal liberation that comes from purpose work becomes an activist stance towards purpose itself, towards the self-actualization, prosperity, and advancement of others. In addition to the catalytic and foundational role that purpose can play in a DEI strategy, people also want work that is personally meaningful. 99% of people believe they cannot be fulfilled in life if they're not fulfilled at work. With a sense of purpose, we unlock the passion to make a generative impact on society and the environment, develop our gifts, and are more likely to receive a raise and promotion, allowing us to better provide for our families and contribute to our communities. Until very recently, concepts like purposeful work and self-actualization were regarded as Californian and unrealistic. Millennials and Zennials, who now represent 40% of the workforce, have been derided as entitled babies for voicing these wants. They are not entitled babies. They are merely better at articulating our common human desire for purposeful work. Increasingly, more of us are following their lead, as 2/3 of us revisited our purpose in life during the pandemic. So there's a chart in the book, which I'm not showing you, but it shows that the search for purpose in life went from, looks like about 37 on the Google's search relevance to, looks like about 87 in the 10 years between 2009 and 2019. So this fairly significant, more than doubling. People are waking up. They're like, yeah, I want purpose. I want meaning. I want to be fulfilled. And that's from Google Trends. As 90% of us are willing to trade 23% of our lifetime earnings for more meaning, it's time to consider that purposeful work is simply what work now means to people. And without purpose, work lacks a central, if not the central component. Unfortunately, only 15% of people believe they can fulfill their purpose in their current roles. The resulting purpose gap, the delta between the 90% of us who want more meaning and the 15% who think it's possible in their current roles, is a massive recruiting and retention risk for organizations. So basically 75% of people want something you're not giving them. So you can give it to them, and it's not that hard. It takes a few $100 and 10 hours of their time. The thing that they want most, a few $100, 10 hours of their time. The demand for purposeful work echoes similar shifts in consumer beliefs, as 9 of every 10 consumers say they would rather buy from a company that leads with purpose, and 87% of global consumers believe businesses should put at least as much emphasis on social interests as business ones. The 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer confirms that we are far beyond the purpose tipping point. Employees are now the most important stakeholder in the organization versus customers, investors, and community. 83% of all employees are now driven by purpose and values. 59% of job changers seek more fulfilling work, inclusive cultures, continuous learning, and a generative impact on society and planet. And 76% are committed to taking actions internally to produce urgent and necessary changes. So I'm just going to highlight this. So 76% want to bring their purpose to work to make changes. Now, something that's also in this Edelman study that I didn't put in the book, but I thought about putting in the book just to have more of a stick, be like, activate purpose, you knuckleheads. They're willing to whistleblow. They're willing to do espionage. I think it's something like half of employees are disengaged or actively undermining their employer. So there's a risk mitigation here too. When you activate purpose, you get them to bring that to work and to welcome their dissenting opinions, their purpose and values, their wild ideas, as opposed to using their purpose and values against the organization. So that's the stick. And like I said, we're past the tipping point. This is happening. So get started. Just do it. If you choose to work with me, Unity Lab, we benefit from that. But if you're not doing it, you're leaving a big pile of chips on the table. Like you're not honoring people's dignity, their humanity, and you're also not getting their best ideas, their productivity, their innovation, and all that stuff that we've already talked about. Further, 79% of purpose-driven employees recommend their company's products and services to others versus the 64% of people who aren't purpose-driven. 76% recommend their company as a place to work versus the 59% of people who aren't purpose-driven. 76% of purpose-driven employees want to stay at their organization for many years versus the 63% who aren't purpose-driven. 78% will do more than what's expected to help the organization succeed versus the 62% who aren't purpose-driven. However, purpose isn't the only thing we need to activate the ethics of the bison. As we explored in the last chapter, every aspect of organizational life must move towards caring for people as connected, whole, unique, and sovereign adults with gifts and passions that are longing to be activated and developed. So driver number 2, belonging. Another quote from Brene Brown. People are hard to hate up close. So people are easy to hate as a group. But when we get to know folks, they're really hard to hate. And we think about all the polarization and the conflict entrepreneurship, all the political entrepreneurs out there just trying to turn groups against each other. Like, when we put people who are different together, put them up close, it's what the private sector can do to stop this bullshit. These knuckleheads are turning us against each other, destroying our democracy, destroying eventually our economy, and making it impossible for us to pass critical legislation that's been proven in virtually every G20 country around public option for healthcare, sustainable energy, mass transit, all this stuff that we need to just baseline table stakes to be a grown-ass nation, we can't get done because of these political entrepreneurs. And frankly, put it back on you, corporate leader. You're not activating democratic virtues. You're not activating purpose and belonging. So the call of the nation rests on your shoulders. As I said before, everything that is good and bad about America is a responsibility of organizations, because this is where we spend our time, 2,000 hours a year. And everything that continues to remain good or bad about our organizations is a responsibility of you, leader. So I know you're not an elected official, but you have considerable power to activate purpose and belonging, the ethics of the bison, democratic virtues in-house and in the marketplace, and with your voice and your brand and your buying power. All right, enough of the shaming call to action. We ache to belong. Whether we consider ourselves employees, kindergartners, humans, or bison, we long to belong. We have simply forgotten our nature. It's time to come back home to ourselves and our relationships. But what does it actually mean to belong? Belonging is the sense that you matter and that all of you is welcome, and you do not have to leave anything at the door. Alex Pentland, PhD, and Oren Lederman, PhD, of MIT's Human Dynamics Lab, have run dozens of studies on belonging and nonverbal communication and group performance. They have discovered that belonging is not about fitting in or conforming, but about mattering in safety. It is the result of a series of behaviors or cues such as energy, turn-taking, inclusion, and intergroup communication that signals safety. Digging deeper, they found that the most effective belonging cues have 3 qualities. So the first is investment, presence, and energy that suggests the relationship is safe and the connection is important. Second is mattering, signaling that each person has dignity, worth, and their contribution is desired. And the third is a shared future, signaling that the relationship has a future. Similarly, COQUAL, which was formerly the Center for Talent Innovation, defines belonging as being composed of feeling seen, connected, supported, and proud. When these elements are activated across the employee experience, then people feel safe, like they matter, can relax, and are excited to learn, grow, connect, and do their best work. As with purpose, there is a powerful belonging ROI, producing a 56% increase in job performance, a 50% reduction in turnover, a 75% decrease in sick days, and a 167% 5% increase in employee net promoter score. Now let's explore how belonging drives organizational health in a few key people functions. Belonging and L&D. We're not just wired to connect and belong, but to learn together. Peer learning is how most learning already happens. Research suggests that 80% of us learn as much or more from our peers than authority figures. And as we've already explored, we learn 63% more from conversations in small, diverse learning cohorts than we do from consuming information alone. This is because weak ties, such as those between trainers and learners, are good for spreading information only. Habits, norms, and building a successful career require more than information transfer, but mirroring, modeling, and reflection that are present in the strong ties of relationships. According to McKinsey & Company, relationships empower us to find meaning and impact as, quote, immersive small group sessions may not sound as sexy as a paid leave of absence to do good in the world, but they are a lot more effective at helping employees start to see the good they can do in their day-to-day work. Belonging and DEI. Belonging matters at every stage in the employee journey, and especially for new diverse hires. If diverse candidates build a wide network of diverse peers in their first 6 months, then they are more likely to receive early promotions and enjoy longer tenures. Wide peer networks empower employees to develop a broader understanding of the organization and industry and bring a greater depth of knowledge and innovation to problem solving, thus empowering diverse hires to be more effective at work, able to build trust, and receive promotions. Without belonging, organizations suffer, as they can't harvest the creativity and productivity benefits that diverse workforces foster. Belonging and wellness. As we explored in the last chapter, nurturing belonging through connection, caring, and contribution is the key to our social and emotional health, driving social integration that increases our lifespans by 7+ years. Connecting with each other also improves our mood, as every hour of as every hour of social time improves your chance of having a good day. Further, regular check-ins empower us to complete our stress cycles and avoid burnout. So how do we structure experiences to activate purpose and belonging? We put people in small, diverse groups where they learn about themselves and each other, develop new skills, and take actions over time. Now we'll explore an emerging set of best practices to do that. The science of social learning. Small group interventions are the future of learning and behavior change. Groups enable behavior change through social support, the formation of group norms, group identity, social identities, and through group feedback and being challenged. As Nick Craig and Scott Snook observed in the Harvard Business Review, quote, you can't get a clear picture of yourself without trusted friends acting as mirrors. When small groups are designed in such a manner that we feel safe and can share uncomfortable feelings, we experience fewer feelings of isolation, alienation, blame, and stigma due to past mistakes. As people are engaged in supporting each other, sharing vulnerably, and skillfully challenging each other over time, their beliefs, behaviors, and underlying intuitions expand their sense of group identity and moral reasoning. Further, in virtual and global organizations with team members in various locations, those who nurture authentic connections between members and empower them to collaborate around a shared task increase team performance. Given the power that groups have to shift behavior, for better or for worse, we must bring a great deal of care and attention to how we form these groups. The size, composition, and duration of group interventions, as well as how people learn together, are critical elements of creating a successful social learning experience. Group size. For every person added to a group, there is a loss of depth and a gain in perspective. So basically, you've seen this when you've got a dinner party of 12, conversation stays up here, but you don't really get to know anybody. You got a dinner party of 4, you get to go pretty deep. Uh, Additionally, larger groups, greater than 6, face logistical difficulties in selecting a time to meet, a recurring time. And there is a loss of conversational depth as people have less time to share their experiences. Conversely, a group of only 2 people is less likely to bring a breadth of perspectives needed for a rich exchange. Also, the connection, understanding, and norms that form between 2 people aren't reinforced by a 3rd or 4th person. So the dyad runs the risk of their connection, learning, and transformation being merely a private matter. Something unique to them and outside of the broader culture versus part of and woven through the broader culture. To conclude, it is likely that the optimal Goldilocks condition for a peer learning group size is 3 to 6 people. Group composition. To create a climate of safety and full expression in the group, it is important that there are as few power dynamics as possible. This means that each group must be composed of peers at roughly the same level and without any direct reporting relationships. Given the limited size of a group, 3 to 6, when a person is placed into a group, it is important that the perspective they bring is diverse and unique. Research suggests that optimizing groups for diversity, especially in relation to gender and ethnicity, yields better learning and behavioral outcomes. Gordon Allport's 1954 contact hypothesis and several decades of subsequent research confirms that the more contact people have with those who are different, the greater they understand them and feel connected to them. A meta-analysis of over 500 studies on intergroup contact revealed that interacting with people who have different backgrounds reduces outgroup prejudice 94% of the time. Of particular interest to organizations is that fostering divides across function and geography is also critical, as it breaks down silos, enhances institutional knowledge transfer, and empowers diverse candidates to build a wide professional network. So, think HQ versus satellite, right? Think division in India versus the division in Brazil. When we create those contexts across those cultures, they learn more, outgroup bias reduces, and we start to function more as a cohesive whole. This has become especially important during the pandemic, as according to a recent Microsoft study, firm-wide remote work caused the collaboration network of workers to become more static and siloed, with fewer bridges between disparate parts. So, yeah, everyone's talking about return to the office, but there's no real going back to the full-scale in-person thing. Yeah, some folks are going to keep showing up a few days a week, but a lot of folks moved during the pandemic. They went to the country. They moved to other cities, be closer to family, be closer to nature. So they don't have the opportunity to have the water cooler. And if you want to develop them equitably, meaning the entire workforce, like not to treat remote folks as second-class citizens, you have to have a social and virtually native approach to culture. Program duration, size, and scope. Because people forget 90% of what they learn within 7 days after a one-time training, it is critical that learning is spaced out over time so that it can be reinforced, woven into identity, experienced in the flow of work, and empowers diverse relationships to form. Research suggests that the optimal number of sessions for social learning experiences is 5 to 6 sessions. Further, as we've explored, in order to affect culture change across an entire population, such as an organization or a business unit, at least 25% of the population must adopt a new belief or practice, a new behavior before a broader culture shift starts to happen. So we'll just pause there for a second. There's a lot of talk about, just get coaches for the leaders. Let's start at the bottom with onboarding. Let's just focus on our managers because they're the culture carriers. 25% of a unit, an entire unit. So that means 25% of every level of seniority across every function within that unit needs to develop whatever skill set or belief or behavior that is desirous to you, to them. So if we're talking about purpose, for example, 25% at each level. So it's not just for the special people, it's not just for the new hires, it's at each level. Otherwise, that culture, that broader behavior shift is not going to happen. Of course, my invitation is activate everybody. At least give everybody the option to do it. Because, like I said, they win, you win, the nation wins. There's no reason not to do it. The ROI is there. Just do it quickly. The republic depends on this, please. And so, long way of saying, like, make no small plans. 25% have to do it in order for it to stick. So don't start small. I know everyone likes to start with a pilot. Well, just make sure your pilot is 25% of that population. While the aforementioned research is relatively new, building diverse relationships around a shared purpose has been central to many of our greatest innovations and proudest moments as a nation. From Farm Aid in the 1980s, to the jigsaw method to racially integrate Texas schools in the 1970s, to the diverse collaboration that put Neil Armstrong on the moon in the 1960s, we continually come back to the same conclusion. We are better, kinder, and stronger together. Given the power of purpose and small, diverse group learning groups, or small, diverse peer learning groups, are you ready to unleash the potential of your people and transform your organization? In the next chapter, we'll explore how to move these best practices into action. So, Chapter 5 summary. There is an overwhelming amount of research that suggests activating purpose and belonging drive flourishing for employees, customers, and investors. And I might add, for the whole organization, and the nation, and all of humanity. Like purpose, belonging must also be cultivated across L&D, DEI, and wellness functions. The current best practice to unlock individual and organizational flourishing is to bring peers together in small, diverse learning groups to activate the purpose at work and share their experiences with each other. Organizations and nations thrive when diverse people work together towards a common purpose. So the reflection questions for your book buddy or book club. When have you felt like you truly belonged? What does it feel like in your body to truly belong? What emotions do you experience when you belong? Describe a time when you were working on a team with a sense of shared purpose and mutual respect. What emotions arise as you recall this time? How would activating your purpose on the job and having multiple diverse and fulfilling relationships at the end of your first year in a new organization impact you? So I want to riff just a little bit on that. The research is there. You need lots of wide peer network, especially if inclusion is a priority. Purpose brings out the best in people, makes them see inclusion, inclusive leadership and communication as self-expression. Because like I said, there are no purposes that are like only for white people, only for black folks. It's for everyone. So when considering the entire employee experience, my invitation to all of you, do 3 of these programs in that employee's first year. So, in the appendix you can see Unity Lab programs, but do 3 of something like this. So I believe Purpose at Work is the foundation piece. So that's our program C3, Clarity, Contribution, Community, like Purpose at Work, and then a values activation program for your organization. or an emotional intelligence accelerator, or a team communication program, all delivered in the same method, where there's a little bit of content, self-reflection, a new action at work, and then self-disclosure in these small groups. So just imagine how that employee, after 1 year, they've discovered their purpose at work. They have 9 new authentic relationships. So not just the one that Gallup talks about. Give them 9. Give them 9 diverse relationships across their peer group. They're learning new things, extensible skill sets like power skills around emotional intelligence, communication, leadership. They're going to know that your organization is a place where they not only belong and can bring their whole self, but they see a future. So that's probably a lot different than what you're doing now with onboarding. Probably, at best it's a 90-day plan with a buddy, a mentor, some one-time things around the values, or, of course, all the HR legal stuff you got to do. But care for this whole person during that first year. You're going to be really surprised who shows up in year 2. And again, we're not talking a huge investment. You can spend about $1,000 to do this. And if they did 3 programs in their first year, that would be 30 hours of their time in their first year to find out who they are, bring it to work, develop skill sets, and leave with 9 diverse relationships. Okay, that's it for chapter 5. More resources in the description. Of course, would love to work with you in any of your organizations, or if you're a leader and you want to join a book club, or if you just need someone to do a keynote or a workshop for your team, we're available for that. Hope this has been valuable. See you next time.